Hey, welcome back. You've seen the men, now we're on to the women. Admittedly, both of these races were raced same day, but I'm doing them one after the other. My pen's falling apart. So I'm trying something compositionally that I don't oft times do, but so there's just been a big crash in the race. Oh, it was scary. I was distracted a bit watching, looking at something online while I was watching the race, and I heard it. Oh, when you hear that sound of bikes going down, it's pretty ugly. As I'm sure I've said before, I raced back in my younger days, not professionally. And actually, I sort of reset my focus to being just an artist after the last series of races I raced, where I had a pretty horrific crash, in that perfect position coming into the bell lap, and just caught the wheel in front of me. And over I went. And oh, God, it hurts. And I just decided, why am I doing this to myself? I'm never going to be good enough to be professional. So I just switched to just keeping my focus on my artwork. But obviously I love to ride. I love watching racing, except for when they have big wrecks like that. So this group, I don't know if the live rider right now, I don't know who that is, went down. But this rider here, Katrana, or she goes by Kazi. Oh shoot, I forget how to pronounce it. I have to look at it. Niwadoma. There we go, Niwadoma. See, I could never be an announcer. She's a racer I've been painting for a long time. She actually did very well in the World Championships here in Richmond. It's the first time I got to know her. But anyway, well, I didn't get to know her, but I got to know her as a racer. She was one of those that went down, and I'm really surprised to see her back on the bike, because she was holding her hip, and that was the thing. I mean, you could hear the cries of pain and the crying, the frustration of having fallen, and just everything that, the adrenaline and energy, and you're trying to figure out, am I okay? Can I get up? And this other rider here, who they just said her name and now I'm forgetting it. This group, so she went down, but I think got started a little more quickly, but was struggling to keep going. So the rider up front is saying, hey, here we come, jump on our wheel. I've had that experience on group rides or centuries in particular, where you kind of get dropped off and you're on no man's land and kind of struggling along, and suddenly a group comes up, and if they let you know they're going to be on you pretty soon, you can actually try to accelerate and catch their wheel. And I'm quite sure that's what's being said here. It's like, hey, jump on my wheel. Jump on our wheel. We'll help you get back. It remains to be seen if the UAE rider can do it. Actually, this turned out better. Now, there was one more rider I was thinking about putting in right back here, but she didn't make the frame, as it were. Just hitting a little bit of the flat landscape, the trees on the edge of the farmland. And then the road surface. It always gets a little confusing. Call this jump on. And I've lost my pen cap. Oh well. I'll find that in a minute. So now I'll start laying in the color. And I'm going to start with the flesh tones, although there's not a lot of flesh tones showing. That's the thing. It's been very clear that this has been miserable racing weather. Earlier, the camera link-ups weren't working really well, and the images kept freezing and popping back on, because the way this is done is the camera bikes send their image up to a plane that's flying overhead, and then that image is kicked back down to the broadcast truck, and it's a whole big production to make this work. It's really stunning just how much technology goes into showing us these wonderful images of bike racing. It's really, not only is it amazing to watch the racing, but the fact that we get to watch the racing. And they have been experimenting with putting GoPros on the riders' bikes, and somehow managed to get those links to be live. So during the race, you can actually be in the middle of the peloton, which is not a place for the faint of heart. So I've been in my share of pileups racing. I told about that one, but I've had a number where and it just hurts. And then, of course, when I was racing, of course, I didn't have a team or sponsors or any of that kind of stuff. So a wreck meant I was going to be out some money trying to get the bike back up and running. So it just got too expensive. Didn't mean I didn't love it. And the training that went with it and the buddies that I made. I've actually today had one of those cycling buddies come by. He organizes a Bikes for Kids every year. And just donated a painting from the women's Strada Bianche. To be auctioned off along with, and I felt like it was a perfect combination. Thanks to the generosity of Catherine Bertine, I had a copy of her book that she had mailed to me, but I had already bought one, and I had told her that I would donate it to raise money for this, donating bikes to kids who otherwise would never have them. She was excited about that. So it seemed appropriate that if I was going to do that, I should also, the artwork should be women racing as well. So that's what I sent off. I have to remember to go on my website gregleach.com, by the way, and make sure to mark that painting as sold. So as while I'm talking, I've been working through the color palette of this piece. I do got to say the women's Peloton colors are a lot better. Sometimes a bit harder to paint, but particularly the combination of Canyon SRAM and UAE are both very bold, colorful kits, which I love. Unfortunately, I've changed this position a little bit, so it's a little hard for me to make out. But I think they're this color. Well, there. Actually, I just cheated. They're that color for sure. Because this painting is the same team. No, that's the same team. Sorry, I was whispering, wasn't I? Ended up with a chunk of paint where I didn't want it. So it's going to be interesting to see if this group can get back into the race. There's still 45, 50 kilometers to go. So if they've got the legs and the will to keep going, I'm sure they will. But that's the other thing, of course, you get back in, but you've spent an awful lot of energy getting back into the race, and what is that going to cost you? So, less than ideal. Here, I'm going to cheat and look at my cheat sheet. Oh, that's Marta Bastinelli. And of course, they have bib numbers here, but usually they also have a bib number on the back of their bike, but all of these racers have crashed. And the quickest way to get people back up and running is rather than change their wheels or, straighten their handlebars, do whatever needs to be done to the bike. They'll just give them another bike, give them their spare. But of course, that means their spare doesn't have their race number on it. And therefore, we don't know who she is yet. Now, in some cases, like I've painted racers, and I just know them. I know them by how they sit on the bike. I know them, by the team. Of course, then they do things like change teams. But, and of course, the race commentators are much more familiar than I am. I may be more familiar than Joe Blow, but so sometimes you'll know who the rider is even without having to see their number. But sadly, we don't get to watch as much women's cycling as we do men's. And women don't have as many races as the men do, nor do they race as far, which is very chauvinistic, thinking that women can't race the same distances that men can. A lot of the teams, though, now have started doing training camps with the men and the women together on on the same team. That, of course, it requires that the teams have both a man's and a women's team. Canyon SRAM doesn't, but UAE does. This is actually turning out much better than I feared. That was a bit of a risk on my part to and that was part of what I wanted to do. I wanted to film a piece with the risk of it not working to show that part of it. This does give me time to remind you that if you like what you're watching, if you want to know when the next paintings are going to pop up, to please subscribe. If you want to read about all of the racing at Gent-Wevelgem, you can go to my blog, theartofcycling.blogspot.com. And of course, these paintings are all for sale unless they've, in some cases they've actually sold already. Hooray! But they are all on my website, gregleach.com, and I'll post those in the description just in case. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Clearly, as I talk, you know that I'm painting what I love. And even in the non-cycling stuff, always paint what you love what you paint, strive to love what you paint, and paint what you know, too. So, thanks again.